Well, happy Monday here. Monday following XFL 2023 week 3. I think probably the most exciting of the 3 weekends thus far. We had no major controversies. Lots of exciting gameplay. We will break through it all today and break it down with we have Andrew Murray here coming on. Quick programming note while I have everybody here looking at a Thursday episode this week. Thursday episode. I have to go work on Friday up in the mountains. Have a couple good guests lined up. Have an interview already with another CFL starting quarterback. If you guys were able to listen to our interview last week with Cody Fajardo, should be a good episode. And then I think I have a media appearance this week as well. I'll be able to promote as well. I'll probably be competing against myself on Thursday. But anyway, we will welcome in now the Shannon Sharp to my Skip Bayless. Andrew Murray, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Always. I don't have any Mountain Dew on me, so I can't really do the full Shannon Sharp moniker again. But I'll work on that next week. Maybe it'll be like a little prop that I can have on my desk. They're just sitting next to me.
It's good. I like this. I and Andy and I have talked about this. I love this Monday morning instant reactions, people hopping on, talking through it. It's fresh in the mind. We're coming off a cracking victory last night in overtime, an enormous win against the Avalanche. So exciting all around here. Lots of comments. And then I'm going to say today, so in the thumbnail and stuff, I always say like taking your comments and calls, and we've never taken the call. So if anyone wants to call in later in the show, we're not going to do the whole live stream, like, okay, talk for an hour. But, if you have a minute or two, if you have, question, comment, concern, maybe we'll do that as well. We have Daryl checking in here. Mike, XFL this weekend was on fire. Jacob says the Houston Roughnecks, the Kings of the South. Overall thoughts, and we'll go obviously game by game, and we have all that. Overall thoughts, and then I want to talk the Battlehawks ticket things, but just overall thoughts of the weekend before we get into everything, Andy.
Overall, I think this was the best quality of play so far. And I do think that there were definitely some A-tier games in there listed in that whole slate. I mean, every game was a one-score game. Every game was within one score by the end of the weekend. Now, some of it obviously was more compelling than others, and sometimes it wasn't as invigorating. I mean, take Orlando and Arlington, for example. That was definitely a mid-afternoon snoozer, but most of them were very exhilarating. I mean, the Sea Dragons Vipers game was such a kickoff. Like, that really set the whole tone for the entire weekend. That was unexpected. In my opinion, that was unexpectedly better than I expected it to be. Then you had the DC and St. Louis game, which got really chippy, but was back and forth the entire game. That to me was getting pretty close to A-tier level of play. I think the Dragons Vipers game was the best. Houston, San Antonio, I think people maybe expected a little bit more scoring in that game, especially in the second half. I mean, Houston got shut out the second half. No one really talked about that, but they didn't score at all after midway through like the second quarter. They missed a field goal and they never really recovered from that. But San Antonio, just play calling wise, wasn't able to get it done. They just never ever got their foot holding in. That defense for Houston was awesome down the stretch. I just think that there was maybe still a little bit of inconsistency on some of the offensive ends. I mean, as I alluded to, Arlington, woof, there's a lot to figure out here. But as far as the overall quality of games, though, I mean, I think this has been the best slate so far. I really do.
Yeah, this is exciting. I think we needed a bounce back, and even with the cash from the field of it all, that whole thing, that was exciting. I was at our Hazel's birthday party. I turned on the game because I was following along, and I rewatched it yesterday morning before everything else, and I thought, I wonder what's going on in this game right now. It seems like I turned it on. It's 4th and 2. Ben DiNucci throwing it down. I'm like, and and I'm sitting there. I show it to my brother-in-law. He's like, "Wow, this is exciting." These are the kinds of things. Turning it on, seeing close games, seeing momentum like that. Before we full on break down the games, want to point out here, and of course, here we go. And so this is going on right now, kind of as we speak. Battlehawks, talking about a hit, talking about momentum, coming off of a loss against the Defenders, but opening up the 300 level for the first home game. I know Mark had tweeted that he was, that they were expecting, 30 plus thousand for that game. This is a good sign for that. You can go on right now, attendance, and we can talk through that. I have the figures for Mark as well, kind of the week's attendance weekend, but exciting here. I think the dome is going to be packed. What do you make of this? And $40 season tickets here, 300 level. I saw people already want them to open the 400 level. I'm like, guys, we have to call before we run. What do you make of this? I think this is really exciting.
Heck, I think they're ready to open the roof. I mean, they it's been a long time coming. This is going to be by far the loudest game of maybe the entire year, because it's just going to be so adrenaline boosting for this entire community, for the city. The fact they're 2-1, honestly, 2-1 is probably the best case scenario. They won two very close matches their first two weeks, and they played well against DC. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy as far as the refereeing going on in that game, but all in all, being 2-1 going into this game, with you have a great story with AJ McCarron as your quarterback, a really passionate leader. You have some great skill position players. Anthony Becht has been just a vocal leader. He's really good with people. His interpersonal skills have been really good. I mean, like, it's the kind of team that fits the profile that this city wants to get behind. Like, the Battlehawks are just really full of passion. I wonder, like, what the final number is going to be. That's really what I'm trying to take more of a ballpark guess. And I mean, right now, based on how it's going, it's going to exceed the number that the highest level got to, which was the lower bowl in 2020. I mean, it's going to surpass that level, basically, based on what we've been hearing and seeing. So that's pretty remarkable, considering they took 3 years off and nothing going on between that time. So it's just a testament to the fan base and how patient they've been. I mean, they have been the most vocal of all the fan bases since this whole thing went down with Danny and The Rock buying the league.
Yeah, it's exciting. It proves strength of certain markets, and I want to talk about Seattle later too. We're going to have another home game. Some of these people, some things carried over from 2020, like you just said. Battlehawks, that was hot, and you still see. Well, Seattle led the attendance back. Seattle's first opening game, on a Thursday against a Kraken game, right? Guess who's playing this Saturday, same time as the Dragons game? It's another Kraken game. That is something Seattle didn't have to contend with back in 2020. You had a starved sports franchise. Spoiler alert, we are most likely going to the Kraken game on Saturday. We have season tickets to that. We're in playoff contention. I love the Sea Dragons and everything else. And we'll be watching the game, and I'll rewatch it so I'll be able to give context. But that's something, so St. Louis is panning out. I think San Antonio is filling that gap, right? That Seattle, I don't think it's going to be as strong this time. And then what I really like is this St. Louis DC Defenders rivalry now, where St. Louis is like, we're going to get 30,000 in here. We're going to fill the dome. And DC is like, F that. We're going to have 15,000 of the loudest MFFers you've ever heard. We're throwing beer. We're throwing cups. We're stacking cups. Like, I like that rivalry there of who is the loudest. We've seen DC now 3 weeks in a row, right? And now we're going to see, we're going to see St. Louis here kind of open that up. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, St. Louis already has a chip on their shoulder with DC. They've gone to that arena twice and lost in the last two times, 2020, and that was the last game they played, and then 2023. I mean, the DC has had their number. So I think that's a big talking point. Now, of course, when DC rolls in St. Louis, it's going to be really, really contentious. I mean, I cannot believe they got on a flight last night after all the verbal tirades, all of the the pushing and shoving at the end of the game, the special teams coach getting involved with St. Louis. Like, I mean, it was just, I can't imagine, like, can you imagine getting into a scuffle with somebody and being like, all right, well, I'll just sit next to you on the plane flight back to my house. Like, I don't know how that would go for most people, but for an entire team, two teams to do that is very interesting. I'm sure we'll hear some reports about that later, but yeah, I think it's a great rivalry. And yeah, but the fan base thing is so interesting because obviously DC can't have as many people, but they are as equally unhinged, at least in some ways, as the St. Louis fan base, because they have the beer steak. They have that end zone, which is just an absolute pain in the butt to play in. Like, any team that ever goes down in the end zone, things do not go well for teams on offense every time they go down there, every single time. So it's it's like a badge of honor, honestly, for them. I think it's something that they're proud of. And it's something that is going to be going back and forth the entire year. Now, I mean, that's the North Division leader right there, too. That was for the North Division lead. So DC 3-0, and they can hold that over St. Louis's head. So
Greg Parks, I think, tweeted out like, "Oh, it'd be really exciting to see the next DC St. Louis game." I'm like, screw the next game. They got to fly home together. They got to share a plane on the way. If they're in Texas, they're bussing them. Otherwise, like, you got to get on a plane and fly home with them. But I do think that's a lot of heat at the moment. I'll be curious. Beck's post game and this week and kind of his messaging, because I don't see Anthony Beck, Coach Beck, as someone that like wants to deal with that and like undisciplined and we're having scuffles and we're having all that stuff. So, I think he's going to track that down, but we'll get more into that. I guess we'll go back to front. And then, like I said, I want to take some calls here at the end. Game of the night, the Sunday night nightcap. Here, at least back-to-back weekends, we have Brandon Silver's game-winning quarterback and, Wade Phillips and kind of all that stuff. AJ Smith, happy to see a friend of the show getting another W. Like you said, I think people expected this to be high scoring, but then Houston's also the best defense in the league. So I don't know how we get that. What did you make of this 13-22 matchup?
Like I said, I thought there would be a few more points in this game, but honestly, it just shows how complete Houston is. Their defense is just outstanding. That interception by, I hope I'm not butchering his name, Ajane Harris, the guy who picked off that pass from Cone, that was insane. I've never seen a pick like that where the ball is over his head, it's in the receiver's hands, and as it's coming down, being corralled by the receiver, he just kind of takes it away and then runs back towards the end zone. Like, that was really insane. A lot of, obviously, the pass rush for Houston was good. The play calling you can kind of get into with San Antonio wasn't exceptional, especially in that goal-to-go situation. They got a couple of very fortuitous penalties and got down all the way to the one and just couldn't punch it in. Their running game really leaves much to be desired. As you can see at 3.6 yards per carry. I mean, they just haven't really had any explosive runs yet. They haven't been able to get anything going in that game. I think they can. I really want to see them continue to keep Jacquez Patrick in there. I like Kalen Ballage, but he's been kind of hit and miss as far as an efficiency runner. I think Patrick needs to be more involved. The fact that Cone got held under, not just 100 yards. I mean, he got held under 70 passing yards. Like, just nothing in the passing game after they were able to do whatever they wanted to against Orlando. Their receivers got completely shut down. That, to me, is a huge testament against their operation, because I'd seen even in that St. Louis game they played, I still thought I liked things that they did on offense. They just didn't score. But this case, I mean, Houston just didn't let them do anything, especially for entire first half. They were just shut down completely. The only thing they got was that kickoff return at the beginning of the game that gave them a short field to score. But other than that, it's just really tough sledding for San Antonio.
Yeah, we haven't come here. Ken, surprising that Reed's going to regular season game, Kraken game over the Sea Dragons. Not if you know my love for the Kraken. That is not surprising at all. We were at the bar last night. I had the Kraken on one TV. I had the Brahmas game on the other TV. I saw the goal line stand. I saw that, huge. I mean, momentum shifting clearly, right? But I mean, that was the game at that point, and you felt like, they finally got down there, and they're at the 1 yard line. You have the interference, and really exciting. I mean, Wade Phillips has put together. I don't think this should be surprising. Someone of Wade's caliber. We bring in AJ Smith. I want to figure out, and I know we talked about this last week, but where was this Brandon Silvers all along? Is this just the perfect scheme and coordinator for him? We're in the right system. We're utilizing him. I mean, 24 of 35, 278, 3 touchdowns, interception. I mean, where was he back in Seattle in 2020?
Trying to keep BJ Daniels off from taking his job. That's what he was doing, but not doing a great job there. But look, I think it's a better operation for him. I mean, this offense just sings under AJ Smith. Like, there's so much weaponry that he has. I mean, Max Borghi, obviously dual threat there. Jontre Kirkland, that guy is going to be an NFL team. I mean, he's so good. He's so fluid coming out of his breaks. Deontay Burnett has been very good. I really like that they finally got Bryson Aline kind of involved yesterday as well. He started to have a couple of good runs there as well. But yeah, Brandon Silvers, I mean, that's the best he's looked ever. And it might be the best he will ever look, possibly. But this is just such a I mean, it's just the offense has really fit well for him. It's crazy to see another Houston quarterback just have these kinds of numbers again. Like, not to the same level as PJ Walker, obviously, because it's different style from what June Jones runs explicitly with a run and shoot. But still, I mean, it's the same song. It's like they play well at home. They don't lose, and they have a quarterback that's putting up really good numbers, and they have a lot of great skill position players. Like Houston, it's like that's what's so amazing to me, especially with teams like DC and Houston. It's like the identity didn't change, which is crazy because it's 3 years later, and yet here we are. It's like the same thing. It's like they don't lose at home. They have the same style of offense, and they have these fans, and it's really funny how that like the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's almost remarkable, really.
I want to pull up here because we saw as well. I have Mark's tweet here, and I know Mike was reporting this. I don't know why Mike didn't get the credit on Mark's tweet about this, but Houston attendance here 11,309. I think DC was up. The other three were down slightly over last week. The Arlington, the 1206. Dorothy and I account for two of those tickets that were not sold this week that were sold back in week one. So that it's only whatever, but. Houston dominant, 3 games at home, 3 late games at home. I expect to bounce back when they come back. We learned that in the USFL. People have other things to do than go watch a football game every Sunday night. I know that is crazy. Same with me going to the Kraken game. Like, I know that's crazy that there are other things to do, but Houston looking good. 11,000. That is a massive stadium, and that's a concern for another day. But Houston looking good. Like you said, it is really crazy. Yeah. See, Daryl says here that, Houston rodeo is going on. Like, there are other things going on, but Houston, by the way, the best team. I would put them a category above DC, and we'll get to that. But I mean, where do you rank Houston to 1 to 8 right now?
As far as like out of the teams,
just most complete team, yeah.
Oh, number 1 easily. I mean, just defensively and offensively, they have everything they need. They have a great coaching staff. They have the pedigree. I mean, Wade Phillips is an elder statesman. He's awesome. As I've talked about AJ Smith ad nauseum. Like they have everything they need to win the whole thing. And then the South Division, which is pretty tough. Although, there's a lot of inconsistency on offense going on the rest of the league. I mean, just by de facto of them having kind of more there as far as their operation goes on offense, like they're going to be fine in the South Division. I'm really curious to see what happens when they go on the road, especially when they face. I mean, they get to face St. Louis at home. Now they get lucky; they don't have to go to the Battledome this year, for example. They get off the schneid there. They facing a team like DC, facing a better, maybe facing just a team that has a little bit more together on offense. Defensively, I mean, I think the Renegades were a good test, and San Antonio. Look, I like San Antonio. I think they've bit the bullet here in the first few weeks, and I think Heinz Ward's going to figure it out. It's been a bit of a tough sledding for them. That heartbreaker at home the first week, and now this game it's a bad matchup for them. And Houston's going to be a bad matchup for a lot of teams. But when they finally have to get out there and start to kind of be in other people's environments, that's when we'll really see. But I have to put them number 1, and probably then is DC number 2 after that, followed by I'm going to say.
Don't do your whole rankings right now.
I have to think about it. Okay, yeah. But definitely Houston then. Yeah.
Well, like you said, it is. You have this experienced vet, Wade Phillips. Brandon Silvers, been around the block. These guys, AJ Smith, you have a lot of, experience, knowledge there. And not that Heinz, but like you said, first time head coach, rookie quarterback, you're bringing in a lot. Sam has no issue with attendance. It's good. But yeah, this was a tough sled, for whatever. The Brahmas, did not look exceptionally great week 1 against St. Louis. So I don't know why, we thought that this was going to be, the high scoring affair, whatever. I thought it was good, right? I'm certainly glad that it wasn't I'm certainly glad that this was the Sunday night game and not the Guardians game, which we can get into. Any other thoughts on Houston, on the Brahmas, on this matchup? We can go to the other game.
Well, the only thing I'll say is Houston also needs to play in the second half. They have kind of fallen down a little bit, especially they did that against Arlington. They did that here against San Antonio. Even against the Guardians a little bit. They need to be able to come out of these second halves a little bit more smoother in operation. I will say about Silvers, he does tend to throw interceptions, and he's done that in second halves of these games in the last couple weeks. And I think he needs to be able to not let that get away from him, especially again on the road. That's going to be a different story than it is at home. So they have to make sure that they clean that up. But as far as everything else, I mean, things are rolling. Like I said, Roughneck fans literally don't know what the feeling of losing is. It's never happened. Ain't no.
It must be nice, but you have a longtime friend of the show here, Philip, Houston Roughnecks fan, ride or die. Here you go. It's all coming back full circle again on this point. Jacob, Silvers only did, had a cleaner game this week, right? I mean, we're putting him in positions to succeed. I think you ask him to do too much, and there's a level here we're hitting, and that's fine. And you got to have someone like AJ that can kind of work around that, build people to the strength. Talking pressure on Cohen helps so much. BTS high quality football. It seems like people were happy with this game. A game maybe that did not live up to the hype, but I don't know what hype surrounded this game. Guardians, Renegades. Do we are we retroactively remembering Bob Stoops and the Renegades from 2020 as like better than they were? Because they really weren't consistent back in 2020, and they're really kind of struggling right now.
I mean, at least they're winning at home this time. They couldn't even do that the first time around. But man, yeah, this is a problem. Their offensive line is really inconsistent. They can't run the ball. Like they really cannot get any semblance of any sort of rushing attack, and that really can't help them in taking pressure off their quarterbacks, who have both of them have been underwhelming. Now, look, Drew Plitt couldn't really throw much beyond the line of scrimmage. Slaughter, I mean, it was the same story. Like they refuse to pass beyond 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and when they do, it doesn't usually go very well. Now, he had that one drive that they were able to put together in the fourth quarter that really helped them win the entire game, but yeah, I mean, look at some of these numbers. I mean, Davion Smith, unfortunately, he was dealing with an injury. I think it was a left thigh contusion. He was having a problem with that. Couldn't really get anything going. Like Kenneth Farrell, they just brought back on after he'd been cut. They just there's no identity here in the run game. And with that said, you can't really do anything play action wise. You can't do anything. Jonathan Hayes is having a tough time calling the plays. I just wonder if he's better at the head coaching role than he is the offensive coordinator role. It's just not been very good sledding for him. Jay Hayes, his brother, has been doing really good on defense. Like their defense has been really the story. They get a lot of pressure. They create turnovers. They've been really good. And I mean, I know you're like, well, it's Orlando. Of course they are, but they've been good across the board so far. But this Arlington offense, like this doesn't improve. Like this team's not making the playoffs. I'm going to say that right now. If their offense doesn't get better, they're not making the playoffs. I think San Antonio is going to catch them. And I think this is something that it has to be addressed. Something has to spark. I don't know what's going on here besides, quarterback switching, no running game, offensive line's pretty much out of sync. And I think it's all of the above, really.
Well, there was the whole everything was made, and we want Slaughter get Plitt out. We don't want Plitt. And then even after the game, I'm listening because the game must have. I don't know if it ended early. Like they had like 20 minutes of post game sound. Like I was driving home. I had a wedding show yesterday. I was like watching the game and trying to talk to brides and grooms. And I'm listening to the post game on the way home. And Bob Stoops is like, well, we needed the spark. I'm like, you got 10 points in the game. Like you got, and I don't know if it was. We need more time to get Kyle in here, and it's only been a week. Like Andy, if I kick you off the podcast and bring in someone else and get one extra listener, like I don't like. Sure, that's a spark, but I don't know. It just felt like you scored 10 points. This is not. This was not an explosive outcome at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you're kicking off Shannon Sharp, and you're getting what?
Colin Coward.
I don't know. Colin Coward. Sure, yeah, why not? But it's. Yeah, I don't know really what to say about that performance other than actually it might have been worse than the first 2 weeks. Like, which is saying a lot. Like, I don't think it was even that much. Was it that much better than the Vipers game? Was it that much better than the Houston game? Hard to say. I know in the Houston game, they got the benefactor of like having 3 fumbles from Houston. And then also in the first game against the Vipers, Vegas just, gifted them 2 pick sixes. So of course that's the problem here, right? All their points are coming from their defense and from short fields. It's not coming from these long sustained drives that it seems like every other offense at some point, even Orlando's had drives that I've at least been impressed with, but with Arlington, they just cannot get anything sustained at all. And it's really concerning if you're going to think that if you think you're going to get away with just playing great defense and special teams in this league, forget it. You need to have outstanding quarterback play. You need to have skill position players that play out of their minds, and I feel bad for Orlando because I think they had some untimely drops. The Lance Lenore drop yesterday was killer, absolutely killer. They looked like they were going to go down the field and kick a field goal and win. And because of one guy getting injured for Arlington, they had enough time to review the play and it backfired on them. That's a bummer for Orlando. That's just heartbreaking for them. So, but at least they have skill position players that are doing something at certain points. I don't feel that way with Arlington at all. They just have had nothing going for them on offense.
Yeah, I guess this is as good of a time as any to kind of stop down on this. The officiating, the rules. Mark Drumheller, he was on Yahoo Sports on the show on Friday's show. We really dove into that. That Mark had a problem with, the officiating. This is a problem in the NFL. We're supposed to solve this. He didn't, that was really kind of the first I'd really heard about it. Then I'm watching the games this weekend. I see a lot of tweets about it in the group chat. I saw a lot of comments from you guys, like you said, because of the injury, Dean was able to go through. There was a couple other missed calls, and then we saw AJ McCarron, and we'll get to that game. But complaining about the officiating and the missed calls, like I guess I didn't realize it was that bad, and now it seems like it is really bad. Is this a major concern?
I think it means there needs to be a lot of smoothing over as far as the review process goes. Now, how those reviews came about is maybe what is contested here. Like, there wasn't a case where the replay booth was able to stop the play in real time. If, like, say someone got a catch and they were debating about how close it was, and then they had to run down there and see if it was a catch. You saw the same thing in Houston. Now, Houston, there was a catch by John Tree Kirkland that was debatable, and they were able to stop it in time. There was no injury that stopped that. It was able to be stopped in time by the replay booth because they caught it. There are times that these things are not caught, but as we'll get into in the St. Louis game, there were certain things that happened that Coach Beckton, obviously AJ McCarron, were very upset about because they were not caught in real time, or they were things that a lot of times, like as you were pointing out in your podcast, or that was being pointed out in your podcast last week, there are times where Dean Blandino is looking at the angles and going, I don't see anything, or I can't really see this, so we're just going to have to move on. You know what I think it is structurally? I think there's not enough angles, because I'm watching this TV broadcast and I'm not seeing, enough zoom ins. There's no pylon cam I'm seeing. I'm not seeing enough angles in some of these shots that would normally be used for this kind of jurisdiction. Like, you would be able to make these determinations. And that's something I've noticed. Now, I'm not sure if that means there's less cameras, if they're just choosing not to use them, but that seems to me like a structural thing, which, in fairness to Dean Blandino, it's hard to do that specific kind of job if you don't have all the information you need at hand. So in fairness to him, that's tough. But I think it's also just the process of, okay, why wasn't this stopped, or why wasn't this reviewed, or why wasn't this thing not pointed out when it was so blatantly obvious to the audience, which again, we'll get into in the St. Louis game. But it was pretty inconsistent in a lot of facets. I understand.
Well, and there was even the debate where it was near the end of the game, and Stoops wanted to throw the challenge flag because I think they've been told this week, okay, you need a challenge, or they're having conversations with the officials, and with Dean and everybody, and Dean saying well, we're reviewing things in the last few minutes of the game. So if we're going ahead with it, know that it was the right call. You're okay, well, so when am I supposed to use this challenge now? Or when do you want me to use it? Because you're telling me I have this challenge, but then you're telling me that, okay, we're reviewing all these plays for the final 3 minutes or whatever. And we review all the scoring plays and turnovers. You're asking your coaches, for first year head coaches or Bob Stoops or whoever, you have to officiate, legislate your own game, and then also call and run the game. It's just you're putting this on a lot. I know Greg Parks had an issue with this when they announced the challenge rule to begin with at the beginning of the season. You're putting a lot on these coaches' shoulders, and now if we don't even have the proper camera angles or whatever to show it, very challenging.
Well, it really ties the coaches' hands behind their backs, especially when they challenge something early on and then they realize later on, well, maybe that wasn't something that I should have had to challenge for in the first place. And now there's this controversial penalty that I want to be able to go back on and say, hey, wait a minute. No, that wasn't right. And again, the fact that it's being incumbent on these coaches to do this. I still think that the Sky Judge system in the AAF was still one of the most effective systems. I really like that a lot, especially in terms of when flags were thrown or not thrown. That's something that I always was a fan of. That's not being done here so much, but I do think it's something that needs to be observed going forward, because it did. I don't know if it ultimately affected the outcome of some games, but it certainly altered the flow of some of these games for sure, especially two of the games on Sunday, the Orlando game and the St. Louis game.
Anything else with Orlando here? Orlando Renegades, any other thoughts on Stoops and crew, or Buckley still kind of struggle buster? Anything else on this? We can go to the St. Louis game.
Again, I think, Orlando can't seem to get out of their own way. And again, I don't think it's Paxton Lynch's fault. I think he's actually doing fine. He makes good enough decisions with his arms and legs that I don't think it's on him. I really think it's still the offensive line. The fact that they just can't get any other running back going. And it's penalties and unfortunate drops at the wrong time. But I do think there's something in the water in Orlando, and it's it's a bit of a poisoning of the well right now. It's not working. I mean, look at that. He was stacked 4 times again. Like, it's just tough. It's tough to operate as a quarterback when your internal clock is just absolutely destroyed by the second quarter.
It's going to be hard, 0-3 now. Guardians going back to Orlando, and we have this, prize Danny Garcia franchise and everything. Like, it's hard. Camping World, attendance. That's hard. It's hard to have a new market. It's hard to have a team struggle with that. And you would certainly hope that. Not that you want any team to not be good, but you would like a more established team in that way to do that. So we'll go here to the St. Louis DC game. This was hot. See, I think these games, and I don't know if it's just who I'm following online, but these games definitely seem to go the most viral, which I think is a great thing for the league because these have also been really good games, right? We got the beer snake and pack crowd, and Mark's tweeting the audience. We have Evan Wilsmore is finding new friends online. They're tweeting that they're at the game. There's just a lot of things going on. This was a good game. It came down to the wire. We can talk about the scuffle and all of that, but what did you make of the game itself?
The game was great. The first quarter was just like out of the gate great because DC gets that 14-point lead immediately. Jordan Ta'amo's finally throwing passes downfield. He looks the best he's looked all season. The pick 6 by Michael Joseph, that guy's having an incredible season. He's got 3 picks. He's got 2 pick 6s. He's been outstanding. You've got finally, what was really interesting about this game is that Derek King wasn't able to do much on the ground. St. Louis sniffed that out immediately. They realized what DC was trying to do with him, and they said, nope, that's not happening. Now, they still got 136 rushing yards because I think Abram Smith and Raquel Armstead are pretty good themselves. But, yeah, I mean, the game was back and forth. A lot of great big plays in the special teams, big returns. I mean, look, St. Louis, man, they're feisty. They do not go away. That team will just make plays left and right. Hakeem Butler looked great again. AJ McCarron hung in there. He made some really tough throws. Again, defensively, I just thought there was so much going on. Davin Bellamy, I mean, there you got to stand out from the USFL, who got two more sacks. He's been really good on this team. DC, just as an operation, has looked pretty good overall. I like their mantra. I like that they just don't seem to panic anytime they're down or tied at halftime. They just find a way to kind of really control the game going out of the second half. And they were down by 3 in the third quarter, but then they just were able to sustain these drives and be able to kind of grind out the clock and get themselves in a position to sort of not have to deal with all the Battlehawks fans taunting them going into the next week. But like, this has been really good for DC. They just have a lot going for them on the defensive line. They get great turnovers. I mean, they are able to make opportunistic plays on defense. And I like that. I'm glad that Jordan Ta'amo finally started to kind of come out and play well. He needed that, especially he had this big throw downfield that he had immediately that he kind of needed for his own confidence, I think, because it was starting to look a little iffy the first 2 weeks.
No, yeah, huge. And I think that was like the longest play they had, up to the season at that point. The called pick 6 was absolutely insane. I'm sitting, it's like pregame. They go, hey, like, you had this one last week. Like, well, they're just going to give us an opportunity, man. It was like 2 plays. I mean, it was crazy. Running down, same end zone, all the beers. Like, you couldn't write that better. So proud. Like, there was moments like that, stand out. That's going to go on there, go viral, whatever else. Like, really exciting. And Greg Williams' defense, Sam here watching, who's the top backfield in the league right now. I mean, DC is looking really good.
Yeah, DC might be the top. I mean, I don't think they have maybe the best running backs, but I think overall as a unit, they're pretty tough to defend. Like, if you manage to get King rolling, it's really tough to know where they're going and if they're doing any option style play, RPO with Ta'amu or King. It's really tough to know like what angle they're coming at. So I'd say, yeah, this is probably the best backfield, the best running attack in the XFL. But again, I think if they're able to continue having Jordan Ta'amu have a threat with his receivers downfield, like, you're going to open up so much more for this team, and it's going to be really tough to try and game plan for that week in and week out.
I saw your Daniel says DC finally has a team to cheer for. They're fed up with the Commanders' ownership. I don't know if you heard that. I saw a clip this morning about Chance about not kind word. I am a Commanders fan. Not kind words to our owner Daniel Snyder. Did you see any of those clips floating around?
I have not, but that's funny you say that. Like, that wasn't the case like 3 years ago as well too. And they weren't even the Commanders at that point; they were the football team. So it was a different era for this Washington franchise. But I mean, that's fair. Like, it's been really rough sledding for that Washington franchise in multiple aspects. So for them to have this kind of fun, aspect to go to in games in DC, I love just the fact that you're seeing people, like, there's a guy wearing literally a hat with a beer and a snake wrapped around it. I mean, they're really getting into this. You have people, painting their chest. There's just all this, like, the Defenders thing is so funny. It's like this, like, kind of medieval apparel that people wear to the games. Like, I mean, those people are they're nuts. They're crazy. But it adds to the camaraderie and the atmosphere. I also want to say I think the game looked really good on TV, not only just because of the crowd, but also the red and the green. The green field just like popped. It looks so nice. That to me was a big aspect of it. The weather was beautiful. It just looked nice on TV. I think that was a really standout thing for me, and probably why people were a little more tuned in.
We have a comment here, and this is interesting. Mike and I had put this up before. Mike says, a lot of good XFL coverage this weekend. Lots of non-XFL reporters tweeting about the XFL on Saturday, Sunday. And I have to watch. It was sent to me, the Rock being on SVP last night. I don't know if it is ESPN reporters having a wider breadth of, Twitter presence. I don't know what it is. I see tremendously more non-XFL people tweeting about this than I ever saw the USFL. And I don't know if that was because the USFL, it was like, okay, we're Fox. Like, okay, this is like, we don't need anybody. We're Fox. We can promote this. But I see everyone tweet. I mean, I see Pat McAfee tweeting about the XFL. I see everybody tweeting about it. We'll see what the ratings look like this week. Those should be out tomorrow, right? But it seemed, does it seem to you, or am I just in the vacuum with my Twitter feed?
No, I've noticed that too. There are people. I mean, I remember getting a text 2 weeks ago from a guy who I've pestered a billion times about, what I do for a living and all the spring football stuff. And he showed me a text of his dad being like, "Yeah, I'm all in on this. I'm choosing the Brahmas." Like, I've never heard his father talk about like any spring league of any sort ever, and he's a huge NFL fan. And there are people outside of the periphery getting involved. To me, that was really interesting last night that no one talked about, at least not on my end, that I think is this is something that I want all leagues to start taking notice of. During the Houston game, you saw something during the sideline interviews. Did you see the YouTuber got in destroying when he got in there?
Yep.
So he has a microphone and he's interviewing Darius Slay, who is down there supporting his guy, John Drake Kirkland, and, talking him up and saying he's a great player. I love this guy. He's great. And you have this like kind of this synergetic effect between, okay, well, you have football players, obviously, who know football and want to support their guys. But then you also have these other people like the YouTube stars that are going to bring in that younger audience. Is this not something that like CFL fans have been talking about forever about getting these kinds of people involved and saying we need to, hit the younger audience crowd. We got to make sure that we have this younger demographic. Like, that's it to me. Like, that is the quintessential point of like getting those kinds of people involved in your product and saying, hey, this is something that's cool to do. This is something that I'm involved with. This is something that I want other people to pay attention to. That to me was a really standout moment to me as far as like an outer media appearance thing, where somebody who I would never think would be involved with this little community that we're in is being involved in. That's a huge deal. And I think the XFL, honestly, in both iterations, I think have had that more in some respects. It's just been able to get these other outside voices involved in giving an opinion on it. That's a huge deal. It really is.
Andy, as a as a YouTuber that covers all of these alternate football leagues, I may or may not have an opinion on this. No, I mean, obviously destroying is a far bigger celebrity, far bigger, I mean, a million to 0.001%. Hey, CFL, follow the Marcast back on Twitter. That'd be a cool place to start. That'd be a cool place to start. We only doubled your CFL Grey Cup, pre-show with our views, but that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. No, I like to see that, and I liked seeing the NFL guys there. It was same with like I said with McAfee and stuff, like seeing these people. Spoiler alert: when Pat McAfee was talking about the USFL back last year, never positive. It was never positive. And I know it's kind of joking and the refs holding the ball. We'll talk through that game here coming up. But, it was meant, I thought it was meant to be good. We had Derek Carr tweeting, after the St. Louis, DC, the scuffle, like all these players that are rejected should have to fight the Rock. Like that should be their penalty. Did the scuffle, anything else from that? I want to make sure we get to the last game and take any calls before we go. Anything else from the scuffle, the game, anything else?
Well, I was going to say earlier, look, I just feel bad for Coach Beck because I think it all started when he had to use that challenge on the fumble that was clearly a fumble by DC, and he lost his challenge for the rest of the game, and he couldn't challenge two other penalties that were really, or one that was called and one that wasn't called. The return on one of the kickoff returns, or I believe it was a punt return, where they didn't get it because there was a block in the back, and there clearly wasn't, and it got called on St. Louis. Couldn't challenge that. The Jordan Tomu play in the third quarter where he is in the grasp of the DC player and he is throwing the ball in the dirt and there's no one around there. It should be intentional grounding. It's not called. And then they get to run a 4th and 2, they convert it, and they go down and kick a field goal. Like that, to me, was kind of where it all started, where he already, I'm sure, was already starting to get really upset at the replay crew. AJ McCarron talked about in his post-game press conference, just more accountability from the replay staff. And then I think it all just poured over because, DC at the end is like, haha, like we've got this win. And it just, I'm not surprised that it got chippy. I was almost expecting it to, just based on how the emotions in that game were going, the crowd atmosphere, St. Louis fans thinking they're getting, screwed by the calls. It all culminated in just some big tornado at the end. But like, I think overall it's two things. One, I'm glad that they're so invested. I'm glad everyone's so passionate about this, but I do agree that there needs to be some addressing of how that went down with the replaying and not trying to be overly apologetic about, oh, sorry, we missed this call, shrug your shoulders. That can't happen. I understand why AJ's upset.
I like that. Yeah, was it Brian Hill, right? That was doing the people's level.
And that was great. That was awesome too. Yeah.
Max tweeted at me, but I was watching because The Rock, I think, retweeted it too. And like he goes over it, whoever it was, like takes the ball to go continue celebrating. It's like, no, like let him, like leave him be. Like let the running back finish their celebration. Like let's let Brian Hill lead it, and then you can go spike the ball or go do whatever you want. But I did think it was funny. Like, he goes and picks the ball. Like Brian's trying to push him out of the way to go do it. I did think that was very, very humorous. Hey, that's a really easy way to go viral is to replicate the celebration of your owner. Last game here, I did post the link. If anyone wants to call in, I do want to give that an option after we get done with this. We'll be off here in an hour. We got about 17 minutes left. This was needed. I have my Seattle Sea Dragons hat on. I was texting with my season ticket holders. Kraken are hot right now, and I thought we were texting like, thank God the Kraken are hot. Can't handle two losing franchises. Ben DiNucci to Josh Gordon in just a fire Saturday night moment. Went viral for all the right reasons. Really exciting. What did you make of this game?
Absolute barn burner. And I cannot believe they put up that many points in that wind. Like, I mean, they were playing in a tornado. Like it was 30-mile-per-hour winds. They somehow managed, even the field goals they were able to squeak in there were remarkable, really. They were able to get that trajectory of that ball going. I know it's different going both ways on the field, but man, look, Ben DiNucci needed this game, in my opinion. I think he was getting close to potentially giving way to Steven Montez, at least for a moment, because it was not going well. The turnovers were a problem the first 2 weeks, and things were just not gelling on offense. He played out of his mind on Saturday. He made some insane throws. Great. Just overall, I mean, they had 515 yards of offense here. I mean, this is insane. Or at least they did before the kneels down. But they were able to have all this production from all their great players. Morgan Ellison looked awesome. I hope he's okay. He got a little bit nicked up there at the end, but he looked great. Josh Gordon was unbelievable. You had, Ja'Cory Pearson just burning people left and right. It was just amazing. It was a really great performance overall, despite the field, despite the weather conditions. Again, like it's almost like Mother Nature tried to make this, another slugfest, and both teams were like, nope, they're not having it this time. It was just defiant. It was a defiant performance from both sides, and really to see the Sea Dragons being down 8, they keep going for 3, which I have my qualms with, but they keep going for 3 no matter what. June Jones just will not let that train die. And yet they just are able to continuously overcome all these obstacles, and just were finally able to get a win. It was, and you could see it afterwards. Ben was like having an out of body experience by the end. He was out of his mind.
Van was, did you say the mayor, Van?
Ben, not
Ben.
Ben.
Oh,
I'm
Ben.
sure. I'm
sure
Van was too. I'm sure Van is a little hat. He was really lobbying hard to get everyone down there, but Ben was outstanding, and I just loved hearing him just freak out when he threw the touchdown pass to Josh Gordon on 4th and 2.
I was going to say that because, and I see we have Jared. We have callers standing by here. If anyone wants to get in, we'll bring up Jared here in a minute. Ben could have really come into this league. I'm too cool for school, right? Ben, and he's got his, his apparel line, and I was with the Cowboys, and I did like seeing him, hearing him squeak with enjoyment, running down the field, and then seeing the post-game locker room press conference of them just absolutely freaking out. I thought was absolutely fantastic. I had I had something else I wanted to pull up too, because the Sea Dragons tweeted. Now this is going to be terrible podcasting. Talk through the post game locker room celebration. Then I'm going to pull this up, Andy.
Yeah, no, look, the emotion, it was visible. And for a team that you're like, well, they're only 1 and 2. Yeah, but one, that's their first win, and 2, after all the frustration they went through the last 2 weeks, especially on offense. I think the offense they needed that game. They needed to be able to get the run and shoot going, just get anything going, especially in the second half. And look, Vegas played well too. Like they were putting up points left and right. Hundley looked really good at points. Jeff Badette was a problem. I think he should have had over 100 yards. He was just burning the DBs for the Sea Dragons. They should have I'm sure they feel like they should have won too. I honestly, but this was 2 very desperate teams at 0-2 that needed to have this victory. And if they were going to have any shot to fight in the North, which we're already seeing is starting to shape up with DC and St. Louis looking really good. One of these teams needed to figure it out. And yeah, just to see the celebration. Danucci's just having the time of his life in this photo.
Sea Dragons cannot go into Seattle next week 0-3. It's not happening. I did think, and I know Haley listens to the show. I'm not saying that we incepted this, but our title this week was, "Are you not entertained, XFL?" And here we go. Ben DiNucci, were you not entertained last night? So I don't know. I know Haley listens to the show. Maybe we incepted part of that in there. Last question, then we'll bring on Jared. The power of the DiNucci Gordon. I think Pat was already writing about it. Like they could break the all-time, stats for spring leagues and the combination. What do you make of them as a combo?
It could be. It could be better than like Walker and PJ Walker and Cam Phillips. It really could. But, again, whose offense was that? June Jones. June Jones' system is going to make receivers and quarterbacks look amazing. That's just the fact of the matter. But, everybody in the stat line, they just are able to utilize such a unique skill set here. Seattle's talent on offense, that was not a question. Even in the first 2 weeks, it was not a question. It was just a matter of, can they stop turning the ball over at inopportune times? Are they able to run the ball with any semblance of authority, which they did? They finally used Morgan Elson. He looks great. They needed that. They needed to have him to be able to keep that pressure off of Ben DiNucci and not just having it be all about him. By the way, 29 for 37 is insane. He was so accurate. Again, in that wind, I cannot believe some of the passes he threw in those conditions. He was throwing bullets down the field. To me, that's what was almost more shocking. Not just the fact that the way they won, but just the fact that DiNucci was so accurate in those conditions. That to me was surprising.
I was scared. And we had the rain and wind last week, and someone was talking, okay, we're gonna have the desert storms and kind of all that stuff coming into Vegas. We got 3 more games to get through in Vegas, and then hopefully never again here. Like I said, we're going to be taking calls here on our Monday morning talk show here with Andy and I. We have Jared, longtime friend Jared, coming on. Jared, if anyone else wants to call in here before we get out the hour 2, Jared, what are the people saying on the streets? What was the XFL week 3 like?
Well, I actually had to work, so I have all the I've been watching the replays with the ESPN Plus, because that was my biggest question: is after the live stream is over, can we watch them afterwards? And luckily, it's a big yes, and it's right after. So I watched most of the games. I got one more game left to watch, the Renegades, which I see there was not many points. That was kind of weird how they were a 9-point favorite, but they only put up 10 points. That's a little bit strange. So,
Jared, as a Guardians fan, how are you coping with the season?
It's sucking, and this was their chance to win a game. If you're only, you got to win those games if they're only putting up 10 points. There's so many other better teams right now. I got a ticket for the Renegades versus Orlando game last week in the season. So I'm 160 miles from Orlando, so I can't go to every single game. But yeah, I'm rooting for them because they're the local team. But I've kind of had a keen eye to like the Brahmas, who I got to see. And I love their wide receivers. They're tall, they're lengthy. I like Kellen Balaj. He's a good running back. There's some other players in the league that I like too. With Seattle, that Eliason, the running back, he was amazing. Like, he was bulldozing people. As long as he's not getting hurt, he's a wrecker. So, what did you guys think of when Danucci threw it to Josh Gordon? Josh Gordon was backpedaling for a little while, and then I think he thought he was closer to the end zone. Or what?
Yeah, I was kind of, that to me speaks of spring league players not being able to tackle. Andy, what did you make of that?
I think a little bit too, but I think he also just knew the DBs were not going to get him down at that point, and he was just kind of like clearing the space, like, I'm going to do my thing. But he seemed to be under the impression that like he was about to go into the end zone. I agree with you. It did seem a bit odd that he was like kind of backlining and he goes, oh, wait, I got 15 yards. So he had to kind of like round around.
Yeah, and he still got out of the way and was able to get to the end zone. But like, and then another, before I go, what do you guys think of Jack Cohn throwing it to the ground so many times? Like, he might need to stop doing that, because I thought one was considered a fumble possibly.
Yeah, Andy, let's get your thoughts on that, and then we'll get Jared out of here.
Yeah, I think he just had no answers. I think his rhythm was shot. Like that defensive line front for Houston just completely destroyed any semblance of rhythm he was going to get. But I do agree, he almost fumbled it a couple of times. I think it's just a bad matchup. I think Cohn's actually played better than I expected overall, but he just had no chance last night. He was never going to be able to see it over those defensive linemen. They were coming after him all the game.
Yeah, I was thinking like intentional grounding's been kind of a thing that could be more prevalent, or they could be calling.
Well, they did in the St. Louis game. That's why they were so mad, because Tom clearly threw an intentional grounding. Like, that was the textbook definition, and they didn't make that marking. Afterwards, when they got the 4th and 2, Beck's like, I want to know who was in the area. That's all I want to know. I want to know what receivers were there. And he's right. Like, there was no, it might say that on the little box score, but that was not the case real time.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. I'm going to leave the show. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Jared.
guys.
Appreciate it. Jared's longtime Guardians fan there. If anyone else wants to call in here before we get out, we'll touch through any final notes here before we go. I did like the Josh Gordon, and I posted the link there. I started it here. I'll post it one more time if anyone else wants to call in. The Josh Gordon, when he went into the end zone, and that's the end that has like just the wall, and he's sitting there like, and you're like, Josh, there's no one there. There's no one. Like, I don't know what you think it looks like on TV, but you are looking at a wall. I didn't think that was funny.
The walls have eyes, maybe. I don't know.
It looked like Daryl says it looked like a walk-off touchdown type of celebration by Gordon. Yeah. All right. Well, so let's go through, and we ranked Houston and then DC. We'll go through the final ones before we get out of here, and let's preview. Let's do a little bit of Friday preview. Who do you got for the remainder 2 for the top 4 of the team?
All right, so my top 4 overall, I'd have to say, as it stands, like I said, easily, I think Houston is your most complete team. I think they have the most going for them offensively and defensively. Number 2, no surprise, it's going to be DC Defenders. I mean, they're 3-0. I just think that they're starting to play better. I think they're going to figure it out. Number 3. So, okay. Now, look, I know that St. Louis obviously is number 3. I think they need to show me that they can just play more than just outside of the fourth quarter in a more consistent basis. I think they actually had a pretty good game against DC. They had a really good game plan. It just didn't go their way. But I think, once they get home, they're going to look like monsters. I think they're going to be number 3 for sure. For me, then I know going into last week, a lot of people thought DC was the lesser impressive team. I actually had it the other way around, and I think that proved itself yesterday. Number 4, you know what? I really, really actually don't want to put Arlington number 4 because their offense really scares me. I don't want to put them there. I want to put someone like San Antonio at number 4, but
it's hard.
I don't know. It's hard because it's like, well, they have one less win. I know that, but if you're telling me like long-term prospects who I believe in more, I'm going to put my stock in San Antonio. So I put them there. Arlington, sure. I'll put Arlington at number 5. So I'm going to put San Antonio number 4. I'm putting Arlington number 5. Sorry, but that's just, I don't care about the wins right now. I care about how you look right now. That's how it goes.
So then you put Sea Dragons at 7?
No, I put them.
Or at 6?
I put them at 6, but I think I think they've put together some good quarters. They just haven't had the wins. I would put them at 6 at the moment, but I think they have a good chance to move up. And that's kind of where I'm at with them.
And then Vipers 7, and then Guardians number 8 with the ball. Guys, put your rankings too in the chat before we get out of here.
Yeah, I almost wanted to put the Vipers above Arlington.
Yeah, I think long-term process. I don't know. Vipers just cannot get lucky. Even this week, I thought that game was done. I really did. The 4th and 2, and then whatever it was, the 45 or whatever, and Danucci to Gordon. Like I don't know. I think it really could have gone the other way. I'm like I said, I'm glad that the Dragons don't have to go in the Lumen 0-3. The key too, and just looking at these matchups here coming up, something to remember, and we deal with this all the time in the CFL. Like when you only have 4 games a weekend, really challenging to bury in, like all 4 of those games get put under a microscope. So the fact that we had 3 or 4 quality games this weekend, all of them close, even the not good game, right? The Guardians, Renegades, like, NFL, they can put 8 games in the Sunday 10 a.m. slot. Like, let's hide all these. Like, all of these are on, under a magnifying glass. I thought they all delivered this week. Coming up this week, Roughnecks at Guardians, the Brahmas at Sea Dragons, Renegades at St. Louis, and then we got the Vipers at DC this time. Which of the 4 is your pick? And guys, what do you think in the chat before we go?
All right. So going forward, I look, I have to think it's going to be a slaughter fest with Houston and Orlando. Like, it's not going to be even close. That's walking into a pit of death there for Orlando. So even at home, I don't think that's going to go well. That's a tough matchup on a Saturday night for that Orlando franchise. San Antonio, Seattle is very interesting. Now you got Seattle facing a team with this identical record for the second straight week. So you got both 1 and 2 teams. Apparently there's going to be some changes on San Antonio's side. Head coach Hines Ward was alluding to that last night in the press conference afterwards. Evan Wilsmore, a Houston reporter, was alluding to that. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what changes. I like Seattle at home. I think they're finally starting to figure some things out on offense. I think they're going to be okay. I think San Antonio, it's going to be tough. I think they'll figure it out on the back end of their schedule, but right now I think it's not looking good for them on Saturday night. I think that's a tough matchup for them there. Going into the Battle Dome, look, Arlington's just basically getting sacrificed on the altar here. Like they're this is a no-win situation for any of these teams. If Houston was going into St. Louis, I'd probably pick St. Louis, honestly, because I think that it's just going to be so emotional in that dome. And I think this team is going to play really well behind this home crowd. But Arlington has just absolutely no shot. I'm sorry. Like whatever spread it is, I don't care. St. Louis is going to blast them out of the building. And then with DC, look, this Vegas team, real shame. Their offensive skill set, really like it. Really like their offense. Brett Hundley played a lot better than what I saw with Luis Perez, obviously in week 2 and lots of parts of week 1, but just schematically, it is interesting that they are playing them so close to the week 2 matchup. So they didn't have a lot of time to kind of get better since that matchup. I think this is still not a very good matchup for them. And honestly, going to DC, that's home field advantage. I can't see myself picking the Vipers. I really want to pick them for one of these games, but it's tough. It's tough sledding. They don't have a home field advantage, and it's a bad matchup for them. They don't have the consistency at other teams. Like they can't. Also, another team that really has a hard time running the ball. Hunley's legs have helped them out a lot, but they still are having a hard time running the ball. I think DC is going to close them out at home. So unfortunately, you're probably looking at 0-4 Vegas.
Yeah, I think game of the weekend is St. Louis. What does the dome look like? How many, do we got people hanging off the rafters? What do we have going on? And then I do very much believe at this point that any game at DC is must watch at this point. I think they have done a tremendous job with that. And that to me, I get excited when I see at DC. That excites me as a fan and someone that likes to watch these teams. I would watch anyone play the Defenders at that point. I think that they're that good at home. Yeah. And then I don't know. Lumen Field's going to be tough. Like I said, Kraken play at the same time. We're playing against the Stars. It's a big game. It's just hard. It's hard. And then, Houston at Guardians. That's going to be, that'll be your slow start to the weekend. Maybe we'll get people tuning into that point. Anything else before we go? I appreciate it. This was fun. Kept it an hour today. Andy, anything else from you?
Well, I was going to say, are we calling Houston Orlando? Is that what we call a soft opening? Is that what we call in the business?
Yeah, soft opening. Let's whet your appetite a little bit. I don't know. I think the Sunday games look a little bit better than the Saturday games at this point, just because I am really scared of that Seattle crowd Saturday night. I'll have to look at the ticket sales this week, but we know we can't even really trust those maps. Super amount, we'll see. That's going to be hard.
Well, they're not coming off a snowstorm this time. That's the other thing. It was ungodly cold the last time, which you didn't. You were in a different part of the world, so it didn't matter. But at that moment, not a concern to you. But I think Seattle. I hope Seattle draws better, obviously, just because of weather conditions permeating. But also, like you said, it's tough with these new markets with these things going on. I mean, look at the Vipers. I'm sure with all the different options they have in Vegas right now. I mean, UFC was on. I forgot that fight, the Jones fight, was going on almost around the same time. Like and it wasn't. I mean, I know it was after the football game, but people were focused on that and being part of that whole event. So competition's important, especially in sports. So you got to know what's going on and scheduling around it. This is something that Danny and the Rocker just gonna have to deal with, and Jerry's gonna have to deal with going forward.
Every time of year, it's the best time of year to play until it's not the best time of year.
Exactly.
I got comments again this weekend from people. Reed, what do you think? Is living up to the hype? Is it not? I've been told this is by design. We want to slow and build, and we don't want to peak and then plummet. I mean, that's easy. Like, they're going to say that, right? I mean, they're not going to say anything. The games have been exciting. I've said that from the beginning. I think the XFL on the field is going to be great. It's everything else that concerns me. And guess what? I'm not concerned right now, but it is living up to what we have said, you have said, other people have said on the show from the beginning. Football's going to be good. Everything else I worry about. Any other thoughts? I know you got to get to work here.
I'm just hoping that we get to see more consistent offense. I think the offense was great this past weekend. I hope we see more of that. And I think you're really going to start to see the contenders kind of separate themselves, at least by win margins. It's good. It's starting to happen right now. But this past week was the best weekend of football, and I hope we get more of it this next weekend.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Like and subscribe. Like I said, I appreciate Andy coming on. Like these Monday morning, call in, talk show, whatever. We had someone else try to call in, and then they dropped off. But if you ever want to call in, I think Thursday show this week, figuring out guests. But I got to go work Friday morning. So unless you want like a 4:30 a.m. episode drop Friday, I think we'll do Thursday, probably Thursday morning, but I'll tweet out, follow along, like and subscribe, follow Andy on the Twitter. He does his kind of key, takeaways, right, of the weekend articles, and then follow Mike Mitchell, because I want to see the TV ratings tomorrow as well. So Mike will be posting about that, at by Mike Mitchell on there. Thank everybody again. I'll play the outro music here. Where did that go? And we'll see you next time. Thanks.